The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 2, Dragon and Soldier. Chapter 7. All right, Jack told himself urgently. Don't panic. Dracos wasn't lost after all. He was just misplaced a little. All right. First off, it was for sure that none of the roving patrols could have gotten him. Certainly not without making a lot of noise in the process. Wherever Dracos had gotten to, he'd gotten there voluntarily. Could he have decided to tackle the HQ building on his own? Ridiculous. Dracos might be a first-class warrior, but he didn't know the first thing about human-designed locks and alarms. He wouldn't have gone there without Jack. And then the obvious answer struck him. Of course, Dracos was hungry. After nearly a week of the starvation diet Jack had put him on, the dragon had finally given up and gone hunting. Jack felt his face warm with shame. He should have tried better to bring Dracos more food. Tried nothing. He should have done better. But with all those kids bustling around and Grisco and the other drill instructors likely to drop in without warning, he shook his head firmly. Those were cheap excuses. And as Uncle Virgil would have said, yesterday's cheap excuses were tomorrow's fish wrap. As of tomorrow, he would start bringing a decent meal home to his partner. Partner. He wondered at the word. Uncle Verge didn't want him to have any partners. Uncle Verge especially didn't want him having a partner with Dracos' rigid, self-sacrificing Kadar warrior ethic. Uncle Verge would be very unhappy if he knew Jack was starting to think of Dracos in that way. The open window was next to the low wall of the washroom's big shower area. Carefully, trying not to make any noise, Jack pulled himself up onto the wall. He steadied himself with a grip on the edge of the window and looked out. The camp was actually rather pretty by starlight. To look on it now, you wouldn't think there was so much grunting and sweating and agony out there during the day. He looked through the trees toward the dark windows of the headquarters building, trying to imagine what kind of security they might have there. And then he caught a flicker of movement from his right. Something that looked like a black shadow was moving swiftly and silently along the ground towards the barracks. It was Dracos. It had to be. And the fact that the dragon's golden scales had turned to combat black meant there was trouble. He slid off the wall onto the shower area's tile floor. If Dracos was moving that fast down there, he wasn't likely to slow down much coming through the window. He didn't. Without any hint of warning, the dragon was suddenly there, leaping with bullseye accuracy straight through the center of the opening. His tail caught the edge of the window with a soft slap as he passed, slowing him down and deflecting his arc just enough to drop in soundlessly into the center of the shower area. "What's the matter?" Jack hissed. Dracos did a startled spin, twisting around like a cat on a hot charcoal grill. The sudden arching of his neck crest relaxed as he saw it was Jack. "I went out to better study the movements of the patrols," the dragon said, his tail twitching restlessly. "I am sorry, but I may have been seen." Jack glanced up at the window. "Where?" "To the north," Dracos said. "I heard movement nearby and went up into the trees." "What happened then?" "I eluded the patrols without difficulty," Dracos said. "I do not think they really know what they are looking for, but they may still be searching for me. I am sorry." "Wait a second," Jack said as a sudden thought struck him. "The patrols are off chasing each other's tails up north?" "They have gone all directions," Dracos said. "From the movements of lights, it would seem they are searching the entire perimeter of the camp." "Are they now?" Jack said, scratching his cheek. "All of them, you think?" The tail twitching suddenly stopped. "What are you suggesting?" Dracos asked cautiously. Jack nodded toward the window. "I'm thinking this might be a good time to go crash the party." Dracos' neck crest stiffened a little. "But the patrols are on alert." "Right," Jack agreed. "But they're on alert somewhere else. Give me a second to get dressed." 2 minutes later, he was back. Dracos had closed the window down to a crack again and was crouching on top of the shower wall, peering out. With the immediate excitement over, his scales had returned to their usual red-edged gold. "I see and hear no evidence of movement," he reported.
But I am not convinced this is a wise move.
The worst that can happen is that we have to dodge the patrols, Jack pointed out as he pulled on the thin plastic camouflage gloves that had come with his field kit. No point leaving fingerprints or traces of sweat where anyone could find them. If we wait until tomorrow, we'll have to do that anyway. At least here we start with an open playing field.
Tomorrow the patrols will be on a known schedule,
Dracos countered. But nevertheless, he pushed open the window and slid through. Climbing up onto the shower wall, Jack got his legs through the opening and followed. The window was pretty high, and as he lowered himself, he wondered briefly about his chances of twisting an ankle as he hit the ground. He needn't have worried. Dracos had taken up position beneath the window, stretching up on his hind legs with his front paws braced against the wall. Jack's feet found spots on the dragon's shoulders, and a second later he was safely on the ground. Looks clear, Jack whispered as they crouched together beside the barracks. Let's go. Dracos put a paw on Jack's outstretched hand and disappeared up at the sleeve. Jack waited until he had slithered along his skin to his usual position with his head at Jack's right shoulder. Then, with one final look around, he headed off toward the headquarters building at a quick trot. He had paced off the distance 2 days ago on his way to the mess hall and knew it to be about 100 yards. Sneaking through the trees in the dead of night, senses alert for trouble, it seemed a lot farther. There were no shouts of discovery as they reached the front corner of the headquarters building.
Do we enter through the main door?
Dracos murmured. Probably not, Jack puffed, but I'll check. One glance was all it took. Not a chance, he told the dragon, slipping around the side of the building. The lock's armed 6 ways from August. We've got nothing to pop it without a set of tools.
What then?
Dracos asked. We find a likely window, Jack said, pausing at the first window and giving its edge a quick examination. Maybe on the second floor where they might not be so careful.
Or perhaps the third?
Dracos's head lifted out of Jack's shoulder, pushing aside the shirt material. His tongue flicked out, pointing toward the stars. Jack looked up. Directly above them, 2 windows up, was a darkened third-floor window. Even in the dim light, he could see it was open a few inches. Looks promising, he agreed doubtfully. Can you jump that high?
Brace yourself,
Draco said in reply.
What do I do when I am inside?
Find a way down here, Jack told him, pointing at the first-floor window in front of them. Doesn't look like there's too much of an alarm here. I should be able to talk you through the disarming procedure.
Very well. Are you ready?
Jack planted his feet firmly against the ground and loosened his shirt at the back. Ready. An instant later, he was nearly knocked off his feet as the dragon leaped upward from his back, his front paws shoving down hard on Jack's shoulders for momentum as they passed. Before Jack could even flail for balance, the dragon's rear paws thudded down in the same spots, giving him an extra push upward. Jack grabbed at the edge of the window in front of him, nearly putting his hand through the plastic in the process, and looked up. Dracos was hanging by his front paws from the third-floor window ledge. For a moment, he peered inside, his tongue flicking through the gap to taste the air. Then, working his snout into the opening, he pushed upward, levering the window all the way open. A quick pull, a lunge of golden scales, and he was inside. Jack turned and looked at the silent woods and the darkened building, half seen through them. With Dracos gone, he suddenly felt a lot more exposed out here. He hoped the dragon would hurry. Too late, he also hoped the Edge hadn't loaded their headquarters with hidden security cameras. Getting Dracos recorded on video tube would be all they needed. The light touch that brushed across his shoulder was like a high-voltage electric shock. He twitched violently, nearly wrenching his back as he twisted around, half expecting to see Sergeant Grisco grinning at him over the muzzle of a gun. It wasn't Grisco. It wasn't a gun either. It was instead the plug end of an electrical extension cord. He looked up. Dracos had reappeared in the window of with the cord dangling from between his front paws.
A change in plan,
he whispered down at Jack.
It may be safer to stay on this floor.
Jack took a deep breath, sternly ordering his heart to start beating again. Right, he muttered. Getting a grip on the cord, he started to climb. Between his climbing and Dracos' pulling, he made it up and through the window in record time.
It appears to be an assembly area,
the dragon suggested as Jack peered around at the long tables stacked with electronics gear. Probably maintenance, Jack said, his nose wrinkling at the faint stench of burned insulation. The smell was probably why whoever worked here had decided to leave the window open overnight. I don't see any computers, though, he added, closing the window back down to its original crack. The dragon's ears twitched toward the closed door.
I hear no movement outside.
Good, Jack said, heading toward the door. A gray plastic bag caught his eye as he passed, and he scooped it up. Hold it a second, he added as Dracos reached for the door handle. They may have cameras out there. He slid his hands into the bag, stretching the heavy plastic taunt. Here, you've got the claws in the family, he said. Cut me a couple of eye holes, will you? Dracos' neck arched, and he extended a claw. A couple of quick slashes, and he had a neat slit visor carved into the plastic.
Will that do?
Let's see, Jack said, wincing a little as he slid the bag over his head. He'd seen those claws slice grooves in solid metal, and they'd come a little too close to his hands just now. The positioning was perfect. The bag settled onto the top of his head with the slit directly in front of his eyes. And unlike the eye holes he'd asked for, the slit even allowed him some peripheral vision. Perfect, he told the dragon. Get aboard and let's go. The hallway outside was dark and silent. Jack stayed close to the wall, trying to ignore the rustling of the plastic bag in his ears. The main offices would probably be on the first and second floors, but with luck, one of the rooms up here would have the computer link he needed. He struck gold with the second room he tried. Not only were the 3 terminals in the center of the room, but 2 of the walls were lined with file cabinets. Bingo, Jack murmured as he closed the door behind him. Looks like we found the main file room. Dracos' head rose from Jack's shoulder, his green eyes glittering in the dim starlight filtering in through the window.
We have found old records,
he corrected.
The labels on the cabinets indicate the information is over 5 years old.
Jack felt his lip twist. So much for hunting down the right tube and studying it later in the safety and convenience of the barracks. Well, we can't expect them to just hand it to us, he said philosophically, closing the door and heading for the computers. You want to keep watch? Dracos dropped to the floor from his sleeve. He opened the door a crack and pressed his ear to the opening.
Do not take too long,
he warned. Thanks, Jack said dryly, turning on the computer. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Will there not be code locks?
The dragon asked, ignoring the sarcasm. Like cold on ice.
Pardon?
They'll be all over the place, Jack translated. But Uncle Virgil taught me a few tricks. For a few minutes, he worked in silence. The sewer rat approach, as Uncle Virgil had called this technique, was nearly always effective with human-designed computers. Trouble was, it was also pretty slow. Jack could feel sweat gathering on his forehead beneath his mask as he punched the keys. Sooner or later, he knew, the patrols out there were going to get tired of their search and come home. The computer chugged on, the sewer rat code words chewing away at the defenses. And then, abruptly, Draco stiffened.
Footsteps,
he hissed.
Someone is coming.